Good morning. Wow, you're awake. Welcome to the second open lecture series of the Humanist Institute. I'm Kristen Wintermute, the Executive Director. For those of you who are not familiar with the Institute, it's a national organization that's been providing humanist educational programs since 1982. The Humanist Institute's foundation is its Humanist Studies Certificate Program, for which we have at least a couple graduates here. For over 30 years, this program solely concentrated on educating leaders and potential leaders, largely from the Unitarian, Universalist, or ethical culture traditions, to shape and deliver the message of humanism within a congregational setting. Today, the Humanist Studies Certificate Program has grown from a focused 3-year sequential course of study for leaders to an open, flexible model of learning, allowing individuals to create their own path within the humanist community. The Institute has also expanded its educational offerings beyond the Humanist Studies Certificate Program to include online self-guided courses and on-site seminars or workshops like today's event. The Institute is pleased to not only be offering the second open lecture series on social justice, addressing the narrative of fear, featuring this outstanding panel of speakers, thank you for coming, but is honored to have this event be the kickoff to the start of the Humanist Center of Minnesota. The Humanist Center of Minnesota's mission is to build a community here at the First Unitarian Society through innovative programs and services that engage and promote a humanist worldview and bring compassionate action to the forefront of humanist community. Chris Stedman, you want to stand up? Hello. He is going to be the executive director, and he's also the moderator for today's afternoon panel discussion. He will be leading the way in forming a center that envisions a collaborative community meeting the diverse needs of humanists and intersects with the shared values of other communities. I want to thank our host, the First Unitarian Society, for allowing us to gather here today. The First Unitarian Society is a congregational humanist society that does not impose a fixed creed, but is a community with agreed upon aspirations and core values. Those being to grow beyond damaging tribalism, whether of religion, race, gender, nation, location, or class, to encourage human potential and the diversity of human expression in art and in life, and to pursue knowledge and wisdom wherever the pursuit leads. A fitting community for our topic today. So without further ado, I am pleased to welcome Bobby Joe Champion to the stage.
Well, good morning. You know, it's really interesting to be here on a wonderful Saturday morning after this week in the legislature. So when Kristen said good morning and is glad that you're awake, she really was talking to me. She's glad that I'm awake. Because this week has been a very challenging one, needless to say, when we think in terms of what's been going on at the legislature. So let me say thank you, first of all, for having me. And I know that one of the reasons why I was invited this morning is because my son is best friends with Christian's son, right? So they are frit and frat, if I might say. And I'll talk a little more about that later. But she gave me some specific instructions as it pertains to what she wanted me to briefly talk about today, and I'm going to be as brief as possible. But I will, ahead of time, apologize for my inability to stay because I do have to leave right afterwards. And I told Diane, who I know will speak right after me, that forgive me for leaving. It is not a reflection of my not wanting to hear what she has to say. And I also see Andrea Jenkins here, who I've known for quite some time as well, and I know she's running for city council. And then she posed a question with me this morning, you know, whether she can get my endorsement now that she got the DFL endorsement. And so she's politicking even this morning, and so how I appreciate that. But again, Kristen, you know, asked me to talk about how we as legislators and opinion leaders develop a new narrative create positive solutions, and establish workable strategies for creative and significant change in the Trump era. Now, that's a really big task, if you ask me. Is because life is complex, and I believe that you have to deal with life based on the levels of complexity that it presents. And so when you ask such a question, and to give me a limited amount by which to unpack what it is that she asked me to do is a huge task. But I'm going to not be overwhelmed by the request and do my very best in order to lend my voice into this worthwhile discussion, because I know the other speakers after me will put some meat on the skeletal bones, I like to say. So when you think about this. Every day right now, I don't know about you, but I'm always, since the election of Donald Trump, looking at the news media. I'm looking at post what's going on right now. Is there something that's going to happen? Because I believe and I am clear about the fact that we are in very difficult times. And so when I think about the election of Donald Trump that gave Republicans control of the executive and legislative branches, and with Trump's appointment of Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court, the judicial branch, is a discouraging moment for so many people in society who share what I would believe to my progressive values. For many, including myself, it was hard to believe. In fact, I was downright, confused and perplexed about how our wonderful country, once touted as the home of the free and the brave, elected a president who aroused vile fears of racial bigotry to gain political power. A president who blames and demonizes vulnerable immigrants and expresses extensive mistrust towards Muslims. A president who displays vulgar behavior towards women and in his campaign for president tried to criminalize his opponent. It is unconscionable to me that our president continues to attack the integrity of the free press. In fact, you saw on television yesterday, even individuals from in Montana who attacked a journalist, and then you had another person who said, when they were doing target practice, that, only if it was a member of the press. A man who continually dismisses threats to the public, to the planet's sustainability. This is a person who says they don't believe in global warming. They don't believe in so many things. But a president who promised to wall America off from outsiders while pledging to protect the economic security of the most wealthy. And a man who does this while shielding his own wealth from public accountability. Think about that we don't know if any of the tax policies are going to benefit him and others. But even in the darkest hours of these terrible truths about the president, we know there are many who do not agree with his beliefs. We know that there are many who are committed to help bring America back to the land of the free, the land of equality, the land where all people should and must be treated equally. We must organize. From my perspective, how do we deal with that notion of fear? Is by presenting a notion of hope. President Barack Obama wrote a book called The Audacity of Hope, and the audacity of hope means the nerve of hope. Because when you think in terms of hope, hope intervenes even into a situation, no matter what the surrounding circumstances look like. But it also means that we have to do a better job of organizing. And so we must organize and unite with all who share our beliefs to speak out against Trump's policies. We must work together to resist and change the narrative of Trump's racist and homophobic rhetoric. All of us, collectively, have to fight for the progress we've made. Fight for our country that we still believe in. And that fight starts right here and now. Not tomorrow, but now. In our communities, in our homes, with people who share our common beliefs of the good of our people. So when I think in terms of hope, I am hopeful. I remain hopeful. Why? When you think in terms of fear, right? There always has to be a beam of hope there. But I remain hopeful because I look around this audience and see people who are starving for change. I look around my city and state and know that there are plenty of role models and hunger for how change can be effective from people like you and I. And Barack Obama, in my opinion, even though I talked about his book, was the epitome of change. But just because he isn't our president, and he will always be my president, I always make sure that that's known, right? We still, see, it's okay to applaud at times, right? Like we agree with that. So I saw that Andrea was ready to applaud already. She said, hey, yeah, that's right. It's okay. Even though he isn't our president, we still know and hold hope in our hearts that change is possible. I truly believe the pendulum of conservatism will go too far. It will incite the populace and swing back to the more progressive policies that we all embrace. And that change begins with forms such as this. So when Kristen asked me, I was motivated to come because I do believe that it's a requirement for all of us to work together. Regardless of the fact that I'm a Christian and that I go to a Christian church, the humanist fight is my fight as well. It is our collective fight. So from my vantage point, that change starts with us in forms such as this, and that change begins at rallies and marches. That change forwards our cause by people like you and I showing up to public forums to voice our dissent. We must fight to make our voices of inclusion heard. We must work together to create positive solutions. Together, we can make a difference. Why am I hopeful? One of the reasons why I'm hopeful is our millennials. One place is that our millennial generation, data shows that millennial generation is more diverse and are more at ease with diversity. Millennials are more likely to be against racism, sexism, and other cultural prejudices than older generations. In fact, racial diversity is the most defining and impactful characteristics of the millennial generation. The newly released 2015 census data points out to our millennials' role in transitioning America to the majority-minority nation it is becoming. They comprise 23% of the total population, 30% of the voting age population, and 38% of the primary working age group. Among racial minorities, their numbers are even more imposing. Millennials make up 27% of the total minority population, 38% of voting age minorities, and a whopping 43% of primary working age minorities. As the members of this younger generation age, their progressive values will follow them into mainstream status. They are our future leaders and the impetus for change in America, and I hold my hope in this generation. One of the things that I thought was important when I started looking at this and thinking about the millennials, I reflected on my own past. And so when I was growing up in North Minneapolis, because someone asked me earlier, where are you from? And I'm from North Minneapolis. I was born and raised in North Minneapolis. My mom is from Hooks, Texas, and my dad is from Hope, Arkansas. And so I tell people all the time, because whenever they hear me talk about my dad being from Hope, Arkansas, what's the first question? Did he know Bill Clinton? No, is the answer. But my parents, like others, migrated from the south to the north. And if you look at that great book they call Warmth of Other Suns, it's a great articulation in my mind of migration and how my parents were a part of that migration. But we ended up in North Minneapolis. So I was born and raised in North Minneapolis. I went to North High School, Macalester College. I know that we have a professor here from Macalester, so he is definitely on solid footing with me already just because he is teaching at Macalester. And then I went to William Mitchell for law school. But growing up in North Minneapolis, it was it wasn't as diverse as we would once think, but there were Latino people there, and we had a sprinkle at the time when I was growing up of white people there. There was a young man whose name is Kenny. Kenny was white, and Kenny and I ended up somehow becoming friends from my perspective because we both went to Lincoln Elementary School. But here was an interesting notion, and the reason why I'm hopeful when I think in terms of millennials. Kenny and I were friends. Remember I said that, but I could never go in Kenny's house. So when Kenny and I wanted to get together, I had to wait at the corner or wait outside for him to be able to come outside. I could not go into Kenny's house. So think about the fact that there are numbers of people of color around the country who know people who are white, but they've never been to their house for any other opportunity to just relax or even watch the football game. But let me contrast that with my son, Miles. My son, Miles, is, remember I said earlier, Miss Wintermuth's son is Ari. Ari and Miles have been best friends since age 4. So they couldn't be more different. Miss Wintermuth's son, white and short. Nice long hair, and he has it in this kind of really fabulous and funky sort of hairstyle. Miles is taller than me and dark chocolate, right? But they've been friends since 4 years old. But here's the interesting thing. Miles always goes to Miss Wintermute's house and will even spend the night. Ari will come to our house and spend the night. To me, that was foreign. I was like, really? But look how far we've come. And look at what that is doing when we think in terms of the younger generation, how they're able to interact with each other in ways that the older generation has been unwilling to. Or maybe it's because of their worldview, right? I believe, just like sociologists, that social interaction will also breed opportunities for us to get to know each other in real ways, like create even an opportunity for us to ask very challenging questions of each other, or questions that we are uncertain of. I remember even just recently, there was in my work as a lawyer, sometimes I represent a variety of different people, and I would represent a lot of Somali families. Mothers would be there, others would be there. And when I would interact with them, the first thing you do coming from Western society is, what do? Extend your hand. And I've been in situations where I was like, hello, extended my hand, and they would just look at my hand. And I would be like, wow, wait a minute, why is it that, what's wrong with my hand, right? I started looking at my hand. Did I have something wrong with my hand? And that would happen over and over again until I had an opportunity to ask a person who is Somali to say, hey, I'm in this situation where I've noticed that when I extend my hand to shake their hand, that they don't do it. And it makes me uncomfortable, and I don't want to make them uncomfortable. What should I do? They said, oh, that's easy. Don't extend your hand. Right? They said if the person is comfortable and is comfortable with shaking hands, she will extend her hand first. And I was like, wow, what a revelation. So now when I go and I wait and I say hi, and if they don't extend their hand, I don't extend my hand. I don't make them uncomfortable. They don't make me uncomfortable. It is not a strange or strained notion. But if they extend their hand, I do, and we continue to greet each other in a spirit of friendliness and brotherhood and sisterhood, right? And so when I think in terms of the younger generation, that all goes back to this whole notion of Miles and others like Ari and others who are able to interact with each other on a real level and be able to have real dialogue with each other. Even when you think in terms of the hip-hop community, they are much more open to each other than some of the older generations. So I'm hopeful because even in our urban areas, they are still democratic. Right? Cities like Minneapolis and St. Paul and other urban areas around the country are the most important places left in America where they're under Democrat control. We can and will inevitably play a central role, not only as sites of resistance to Trump's agenda, but also as the birthing ground for new progressive strategies. Our democratic cities must work together to build and fight for long-term political change. We have the will, we have the strength, we will gain the power. And when you think in terms of this, another place I place my hope is in the increasingly democratic diversity in the United States. Our diversity can create an enduring advantage for Democrats and create a favorable political terrain for progressives if they can find a way to make the most of it. By 2055, the United States will not have a single racial or ethnic majority. Much of this change has been and will be driven by immigration. Nearly 59 million immigrants have arrived in the United States in the past 50 years, mostly from Latin America and Asia. Today, a near record 14% of the country's population is foreign-born compared to just 5% in 1965. Over the next 5 decades, the majority of U.S. population growth is projected to be linked to new Asian and Hispanic immigration. American attitudes about immigration and diversity are supportive of these changes for the most part. More Americans say immigrants strengthen the country now than say they burden it. And most say the United States' increasingly ethnic diversity makes it a better place to live. And the reporting on town hall meetings, when we think in terms of even the motivated populace, the reporting of town hall protests and marches across the country that have taken place in the aftermath of the presidential election suggests that people are motivated by anger and fear, and that many people who have not been engaged in political activism previously and speaking out are engaging legislators like me, making their voices heard. And we need to keep their political, political newcomers engaged as well. And we must remember that even if the Trump administration were able to stop the flow of immigration or halt it, Americans will continue to become more diverse in terms of race, religion, and other characteristics. Let's use that diversity to our advantage, using the changing demographics, the inclusiveness of millennials, and expanding diversity of our country to step up our civic engagement. And we must use that as a way to create a powerful and unified vision. As a group, we must hold strong and push for progressive values such as transparency, inclusiveness, equity, fairness, and dignity for all. People respond and make choices on the basis of values, not just policy papers and positions. People identify with fairness, fiscal responsibility, strength, toughness as core progressive values. A group called the Think Progressive adds to this list of freedoms. They say freedom of speech should be there, and association and religion, and freedom to have a fulfilling life should be there. Opportunity, when you think in terms of opportunity, preventing discrimination and embracing diversity, responsibility, individual and shared responsibility, and cooperation, recognizing our interconnectedness. Many people across the nation share these values and want to be engaged. They want to find people to represent them, fight for them, and alongside of them. And we must communicate to these like-minded people that Democrats share their values and their vision. And without Democrats elected to office to fight for our values, our nation takes a step backwards into bigotry and prejudice. So when I know the time is of the essence, and so I'm just going to talk about a couple other smaller things that I think that we should do in order to make sure that we are articulating and engaging people in real time. One of the concerns that I've had is that we need to seek to engage all people and to hear and address their concerns through or with responsible policies. I was talking to Ms. Wintermute earlier today. One of the biggest complaints that I hear in the African American community is the fact that the Democratic Party doesn't listen to them. Don't listen to them at all. They say people come to me and they tell me how I should vote, but they don't have the ability to articulate what I need and show me how their platform responds to my needs. And think about this, is that this is a criticism that both the urban corridors have and the rural corridor has. So I think it's important that we need to listen in order to respond to bread and butter issues. These other peripheral issues are equally as important, but bread and butter are the things that they have to face and deal with every single day. So remember that there's a difference in me telling you what you need as opposed to me listening and acting on what you say you need. That little nuance is very important. And where was one of the places that unfortunately Donald Trump exposed the African American community was when he articulated the fact that the DFL party hasn't done much for you, and they don't listen to you, so why wouldn't you just give me a chance? And I cringed, is because the one thing that the Republican Party, and namely Donald Trump, has been able to do is to regurgitate back to you your own criticisms and where you believe that we fall short. And from my vantage point, I know that this is also a problem when we sometimes go to the door. Even during election time, I know that Andrew Jenkins is going to be and will continue to knock on doors. And I believe that it's going to be very important. The way you knock on that door is equally as important as just knocking on the door. And this comes to engagement, because how do you engage people? Because guess what? Some of those people may not vote for Donald Trump, but what if they don't vote at all? And if they don't vote at all, then that's equivalent to not voting or voting for the wrong person. Do you not know that bad officials are elected when good people don't vote? Bad officials are elected when good people don't vote. Sometimes other people's strategy is just to make you so disenchanted that you won't think about voting. And think about this, that we should seek to understand than to be understood. And what do I mean by that? I think that we have to consider this even when we are talking about our environmental policies. I was talking to a person who's in Hibbing, Minnesota, on the Iron Range, and they know that I have a real concern about mining, and I have a concern about the impact mining will have on our water quality, our environment, and all the other things. But if I was to say to them, we just have to close up all the mining facilities. As environmentalists, we say, whoa, that's great. But guess what that other person hears? No job. No way to provide for my family. No way to send my kid to college. And you can say all day long, well, we can, put you in some classes where you can come up with a new career, but if you're 55, how does that sound to you? And I'm not saying you don't have the conversation, but it has to be sensitive enough in order to understand the position that they are in so that we can now lead them from point A to point B. Even when we think in terms of the younger generation, how do we do that in real time? And so we must consider and appreciate what message is being sent to potential friends or allies. We can frame the message so we are creating open conversation for learning and for growth, or we can create and frame the situation so that people are defensive. And I think that's equally as important as to how we regain people into our pool of voters. Respecting people, to me, that's important. The other day, you just heard me talk about being on the floor. We just passed a jobs bill, and in the jobs bill, Republicans have been, well, let me back up. So even when we think in terms of our budget bills, Republicans have not only wanted to talk about the cost and what we're going to spend money on, but also they put over 609 policy positions in budget bills. And those policy positions have been so bad. I mean, you know how they say, if I take it so extreme right, if you negotiate with me and all of it is bad, then you're somewhere in the middle still being bad.